Spoiler warning for the 3.1 patch update. The desert is finally here, and you know what that means, boys. Another patch update, another Ruin Golem to explore. So let's just see what this dude wants first. Strange things are afoot at the Circle K. See that huge machine over there? That's a relic of the legendary Dory people. Dory? Perhaps you're more familiar with the name Khaenri'ah? Dory is an archaic name that's commonly used in the Vahumana Darshan? Wait, what? Are you trying to tell me it's the ruins of Khaenri'ah? The Valley of Khaenri'ah? The Legend of the Ruins of Khaenri'ah? And in the Ode to Soullight, it should actually read, The Legacy of Khaenri'ah II has submitted to the law? And that in ancient times, the monsters from the Dark Abyss lurked on Devantaka Mountain, and it was only after a long battle that they were finally subdued by the sages and the heroes of Khaenri'ah? And the spin crystal I've been using for my videos is called Vestige of Dory, or Vestige of Khaenri'ah? Okay, Afratu, what else you got for us? Legend has it that the Dahri, or Khaenri'ah Schwanenritter, once piloted these huge machines against the monsters from the Abyss. Schwanenritter, that sounds really familiar. 3 Ruin Golems survived that brutal war. Wait, 3? This is one of them. Where's the third one? Well, I guess it's time to solve some mysteries, but this golem is blasting at me and I don't really know where- No, Paimon! Wow, okay. So the first few minutes of the Afratu's Dilemma world quest is pretty chock full of lore, and I just wanted to go ahead and break down some of the things we find and learn. Part 1. The Schwanenritter. I made a video last patch speculating, based on a single mysterious chronicle in the Devantaka Ruin Golem, that Khaenri'ah fought the abyssal monsters during the Cataclysm, and yeah, Afratu basically immediately confirms that. Exploring the Ruin Golem, you find new texts which chronologically come before those at Devantaka. For one, there are old orders regarding our old pals, Hadura and Infortus, where Hadura is awarded their title of Sentinel of the Golden Hall, long before their betrayal and subsequent execution. You can also find sealed orders near the cabin which call for a rushed evacuation, which is done seemingly under dire straits. But this is in stark comparison to the Devantaka Chronicles, which document the final fates of the few left standing. In the lower area, there are more old orders which further document what seems to be a losing battle with diminishing manpower. It says, "We have successfully led the beasts to the canyon before blanketing them with fire and destroying them. But as the golem began to break down, the crew dispersed to find spare parts." Knowing this, it's tragic to realize that these motionless hilly turtles in front of the Ruin Golem suffered from the mysterious revival of the automaton. Perhaps the Khaenri'ah crew, on a mission to fight the Abyss and repair the Golem, met their end from their own weapon. Part 2. Dory. I wanted to circle back to the very first revelation, because I'm still reeling that Dory is simply another name for Khaenri'ah, instead of being like a related group, or even an adjacent civilization like Enkanomiya. But doing some digging into the real-world concept of Dory, it does make a lot of sense. In the textbook Islam, the Ancient Near East, and Varieties of Godlessness, historian Patricia Crone focuses on Dahrism and its role and place in early Islam. The Dahris rejected the spiritual and metaphysical realms on the basis that either they were false, or that there was no point in trying to understand it if it were so inaccessible. In short, while some flat out denied God's existence, others did not care if he existed or not, and rather focused on what, if any, significance he had for humans. She summarizes some points that we know about the Dahris from a 9th century prose writer and naturist. There are many notable characteristics, but there are 2 that I really want to focus on. One is that Dahris are eternalists, and they believe that time is infinite and matter has always existed. And the second point is that they were adherents of prime matter and the 4 elemental qualities. The irreducible components of the world are the 4 elementary qualities, which are heat, cold, dryness, and moisture, or the 4 elements, fire, earth, air, and water. There were also some who believed in a 5th elemental quality, which was spirit, It's also worth noting that the Dahris were not a sect or a school, but an individual opinion shared by those who largely studied medicine, astrology, and alchemy, as these three sciences in particular were known to have been associated with the four elemental qualities. This inspiration taken from real-world Dahrism certainly checks out with what we know of Khaenri'ah, which was a godless nation with glorious human achievements, and a reliance on alchemy. And it seems that if Khaenri'ah was essentially built from the remains of an older civilization, like the unified one, it still lost its ancestral religion without acquiring belief in another, simply believing in elemental energy itself. One interesting thing I noticed about this chapter is that it also focuses on the similarities and links between Dahris and Zindiks. This was a term that first specifically referred to followers of Manichaeism, which is a type of Gnosticism, but broadened to include agnostics and atheists, and even more broadly, heretics. This may sound familiar to some due to a cognate, Zandik, which is also the name of a very familiar researcher to us. So Zindiks and Dahris have a lot of similarities, and I think this usage is very intentional, especially if, as some people have theorized, that Zandik is Dottore himself. I mean, of course the first and second Harbingers would be besties. As a final note on this part, I do want to say as a disclaimer, I'm not an expert on history or any of this really. I've just been summarizing very, very simplistically what I've been reading. But, speaking of Dottore... Part 3. The Curse. There are 2 academia investigation reports in the Valley of Dahri. One is unsigned, but its writer is interested in secretly studying the Ruin Golem. It's safe to assume that this is also Zandik, and thus perhaps Dottore, given his later note referencing this Gurabad sample. The second report is much different in subject matter. Here, Zandik, or some other researcher, record the effects of a sickness. The afflicted show symptoms of peeling skin and proliferation of hair, and worst of all, severe facial ulceration. The scab sections appear to have formed a new layer of skin. Many of the afflicted have begun to show signs of language impairment. Between the hirsutism, deformed faces, and language deficiency, this sounds like a hilly churl. Given that the Academia's report is found in the Ruin Golem arm, what they found may have actually been Khaenri'ah citizens in an advanced stage of their curse after the cataclysm. But that's not all. Early on in the quest, you can find more sealed orders that describe a first-person account of the progression of the sickness, or curse. This strange illness has plagued me ever since I entered the desert. At first, I was just peeling skin, and then I began to develop necrosis on all 4 limbs. The pestilence has marred my appearance. We can surmise this is a Khaenri'ah, since we know that Khaenri'ah was underground. They go on to say, I entered an underground city far beneath even the land from which I came. Their faces, too, had been melted to the point where no humanity might be glimpsed in them. The letter ends with ominous and foreboding words. The curse, inescapable, but we will be reunited. These accounts not only give us insight into the tragedy of Khaenri'ah, but may also reveal some truths about the present. During the Archon quest, you can find medical records in a locked drawer. The document monitors a farmer named Abbas as he is afflicted and suffers from Eleazar. Scabby skin at limb extremities, multiple ulcers across the body, paralysis and pain, necrosis and ulcers, falling into a coma. The key here is a brief comment. The scabs are scale-like and have spread across the surface of the body. The farmer eventually and miraculously recovers due to Dottore's intervention. But once again, I wonder the connection between all these plagues and curses. At the end of the Archon quest, we learn that the Scarlet King's people also suffered from a similar scaly affliction and madness. I'm inclined to think that these are, metaphorically, different strains of the same virus. Forbidden knowledge. And if you'd like to hear my speculation on the role of the Abyss in this, I discussed the corruptive nature of the Abyss and destruction of past civilizations in my last video. And as to where Celestia fits in all this with regards to Khaenri'ah, What if the real curse was simply immortality and forever suffering? Part 4. Wake up. I'll keep this one short. The entire point of this quest is Afratu's confusion and concern over the reactivation of the Ruin Golem. Because the entrance was sealed off, we conclude that Leyline energy revived the automatic components of the Ruin Golem. This is not unprecedented, as near the end of the Aranyaka quest, a Ruin Greater is continuously powered by the withering or sick Leyline energy. Afratu also says as much. So we've seen 2 of the Ruin Golems, with the 3rd left to be discovered. And there's connections between the Leylines and Khaenri'ah technology. And now there's some Leyline anomalies. So as Afratu wisely deducts, this could mean trouble. Thanks everyone for watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting. I love hearing everyone's theories, so do share your own ideas below. Also, I usually co-host a Genshin stream with Desu over on Twitch, so drop by and say hi sometime. We talk lore, play Genshin, and just get real goofy. So see you later!